the Ernetti Chronovisor. Please note this image carefully. I am Father Graves, and what you see before you is the exact moment my faith was shaken forever. This document in my hands, it should not exist. It is the confidential report on the most dangerous machine ever built within the sacred halls of the Vatican. A machine that defied the very laws of God. The scent of centuries-old parchment mingles with the stale incense that permeates these forbidden archives. My breath echoes in the sepulchral silence, broken only by the rustle of pages revealing a secret kept for decades. Do you see the tension in my face? It's the reflection of the horror I just uncovered about Father Pellegrino Ernetti and his scientific blasphemy. In 1952, in the depths of a secret Benedictine laboratory, Ernetti began constructing something the Church should never have allowed, the Chronovisor. A machine capable of piercing the veil of time, witnessing events only God should know. His superiors thought they were funding innocent acoustic research. How wrong they were. The cold of ancient stone seeps into my bones as I read the first technical descriptions. Ernetti didn't work alone. Renowned scientists like Enrico Fermi and Wernher von Braun contributed knowledge that would challenge the very nature of reality. But it was in the Vatican's basements that the machine came to life, fueled by a curiosity that soon turned into obsession. The conspiracy was perfect. Officially, Ernetti was studying ancient Gregorian music. Unofficially, he was building windows to the past. The device grew in complexity, parabolic antennas connected to cathode ray tubes, amplifiers capturing not light or sound, but the very temporal vibrations echoing through the centuries. My hand trembles as I turn the page. The first successful experiment was documented in disturbing detail. Ernetti managed to visualize a theatrical performance from 169 BC, Thyestes by Quintus Ennius. But that was just the beginning. The machine worked. Time had bent to human will. Subsequent reports describe how Ernetti became addicted to his temporal visions. He witnessed Napoleon in his final conversations, saw Cicero delivering lost speeches, observed ancient poets composing their immortal works. Each session lasted hours, and with every use, something in Ernetti changed. His eyes lost their spark, his faith fractured before the raw truth of history. But then came the night that changed everything. The document I hold recounts that in a session in March 1957, Ernetti aimed the Chronovisor at the most sacred event in humanity's history. He wanted to see the crucifixion of Christ. He wanted to witness with his own eyes the moment that defines our faith. What he saw on that flickering screen, in the silent depths of the Vatican laboratory, broke something fundamental in his soul. The report describes how Ernetti emerged from the session utterly transformed. His hair had turned white, his hands wouldn't stop trembling, and his lips whispered prayers in languages no one recognized. The silence of these archives seems to whisper the fears Ernetti carried for the rest of his life. The truth he witnessed about the crucifixion was so disturbing that his superiors immediately classified the entire research as ultra-secret. The machine was dismantled, its components scattered to the ends of the earth, and Ernetti was confined to an isolated monastery until his death. But the documents don't end there. There are photographs, blurred, almost ethereal images supposedly showing scenes from the past captured by the Chronovisor. One claims to show the face of Christ in his final moments of agony. And that face, it's not what we would expect to see. Do you see the horror in my expression? It's because I discovered that the machine may still be operational. Somewhere in the deepest vaults of the Vatican, guarded by secrets that have cost lives, Ernetti's technology may have survived. And if it has, then someone is still watching the past, and perhaps uncovering truths God never intended us to know. Subscribe to this channel, because what I will reveal in the coming parts about Ernetti's Chronovisor will forever change how you understand not only our faith but the very nature of reality. The truth about what Ernetti saw during the crucifixion, and why the Church did everything to hide it from you. This image was taken from the Vatican's most secret archives, the laboratory of Pellegrino Ernetti on the night of his first successful temporal vision. Observe the priest's posture. Those hunched shoulders bear the weight of having violated the fundamental laws of creation. But how did we arrive at this blasphemous moment? The damp cold of the Benedictine underground seeped into Ernetti's bones as he worked obsessively night after night. The metallic clank of tools echoed through the Gothic vaults, mingling with his whispered prayers that gradually turned into pleas for divine forgiveness for what he was about to create. In January 1952, Ernetti received a visit that changed everything. Enrico Fermi, the physicist who unleashed the atom, quietly descended into the monastery's basements. The two men spoke in Latin, their voices reverberating among the ancient stones. Fermi brought knowledge about the nature of time that humanity should not possess. Theories drawn from nuclear experiments that revealed cracks in reality itself. The project, officially called Gregorian Acoustic Research, became an elaborate farce. Naive superiors approved astronomical budgets, believing they were funding the preservation of sacred chants. In truth, they were financing the construction of a machine that would defy God, a device capable of spying on the divine past. Wernher von Braun arrived in March, bringing technologies developed for the American space program. The man who would send rockets to the heavens now helped drill holes in time. His technical schematics, scribbled in German, covered the laboratory walls like a blasphemous scientific grimoire. The first attempt nearly killed Ernetti. The Chronovisor operated for only 17 seconds, but the electrical surge threw him against the stone walls. When he regained consciousness, his first whispers were in Aramaic, a language he had never studied. Something had connected in his mind, something ancient and disturbing. Subsequent improvements made the machine more stable but infinitely more dangerous. Ernetti discovered that temporal vibrations were not neutral. They carried the emotions and traumas of the events observed. Each session contaminated him with the feelings of the dead, psychic echoes that accumulated in his soul like spiritual poison. The first clear vision came in September 1952. Ernetti witnessed Marcus Tullius Cicero delivering his first Catilinarian oration in the Roman Senate. The image was crystal clear, almost three-dimensional. He could see the worry lines on the orator's face, feel the political tension electrifying the ancient air. But even more disturbing, Cicero seemed aware he was being watched, his eyes occasionally locking onto the temporal camera. The experiments intensified. Ernetti mapped lost historical events, private conversations between emperors, secret druidic rituals, gatherings of early Christians in the catacombs. Each discovery pulled him further from the light, plunging him into darkness that even confession couldn't alleviate. But in December he made a terrifying discovery. While observing a Roman execution in 67 AD, Ernetti noticed a familiar figure in the crowd, a man who looked exactly like himself. Impossible, he rationalized. But when he zoomed in, there was no doubt. It was his face, aged and marked by horror, watching from within the temporal vision. Paranoia set in. Ernetti began to suspect that time was not linear, that his observations created causal paradoxes echoing through the centuries. He wasn't just seeing the past, he was becoming part of it. Each session trapped him deeper in the temporal web he had created. In February 1953, the news Ernetti secretly awaited and feared arrived. The Vatican had approved a special session, an observation that would test the limits of his creation and his faith. The cardinals wanted him to aim the Chronovisor at the most sacred event in human history. They wanted him to witness the crucifixion of Christ. Ernetti knew that agreeing meant crossing a line from which there was no return. Observing the Savior's death wasn't just historical voyeurism, it was absolute blasphemy. But scientific curiosity, fueled by years of impossible discoveries, spoke louder than divine fear. The date was set for March 1957. Ernetti had 4 years to refine the machine, to prepare it for the most important and dangerous moment of its existence. He didn't know that this decision would condemn him not only spiritually but physically, because some truths about God are too violent for mortal minds to bear. Over the next 4 years, as he prepared the Chronovisor for its ultimate mission, Ernetti made discoveries that shook the very foundations of the Catholic faith. Discoveries that explain why, even today, mentioning his name in the Vatican's halls is considered anathema. Observe Ernetti's physical deterioration in this 1955 photograph. In just 3 years of temporal experimentation, the man aged a decade. His once steady hands now trembled constantly, a side effect of the chronological vibrations his body absorbed with each session. But the most disturbing transformation was happening in his mind. The scent of incense could no longer mask the ozone smell emanating from the machine in operation. The Chronovisor had become an almost living entity, its cathode ray tubes pulsing like electronic veins, its antenna self-adjusting to capture increasingly ancient temporal echoes. Ernetti realized he no longer controlled the machine. It controlled him. During preparations for the crucifixion observation, Ernetti made a terrifying discovery. While calibrating the device for the 1st century AD, he accidentally intercepted other observation sessions. Someone else was using similar technology, watching the same historical events. The temporal frequencies were occupied. The first confirmation came when he detected interference during a session focused on the Sermon on the Mount. On the screen, among the disciples, Ernetti glimpsed anachronistic figures, people wearing modern clothing, discreetly observing from the back of the crowd. other temporal voyeurs from eras he couldn't identify. The Chronovisor's technology was not unique. Worse still, Ernetti discovered that some of these temporal presences were hostile. During an observation of the Last Supper, he caught whispers in languages that shouldn't exist. Future languages, perhaps, or tongues from dimensions where time functioned differently. The whispers sounded like rituals, invocations directed at the historical Christ. Paranoia consumed his nights. Ernetti began documenting everything in code, fearing his discoveries were being intercepted by these temporal presences. He theorized that time was like an ocean, and every chronological observation created ripples that alerted other navigators of this forbidden dimension. In 1956, an event nearly made him abandon the project. During a routine session observing a Jerusalem market in 30 AD, Ernetti saw something impossible in the crowd. It was himself, older, dressed in period robes and speaking fluent Aramaic with local merchants. It wasn't a vision, it was a real physical presence. His future self was living in the past. The shock was so intense that Ernetti fainted. When he awoke, he found a message scribbled in his own handwriting, but in a language he couldn't read. Later analysis revealed it was written in archaic Aramaic, warning of the night when the heavens will tear and God will weep tears of blood. Superiors began visiting the laboratory more frequently, concerned by reports from servants who heard Ernetti talking to himself in non-existent languages. But he wasn't alone. He was conversing with versions of himself from different temporal periods, forming an interdimensional council to plan the most dangerous observation in history. The machine evolved on its own. New components appeared overnight, parts Ernetti didn't recall installing. The technology was self-improving, preparing to capture not just images and sounds of the crucifixion but its very spiritual emanations. The Chronovisor was no longer content with observing, it wanted to absorb. In December 1956, Ernetti made his most disturbing discovery. While testing extremely high frequencies, he intercepted fragments of an impossible conversation. Jesus Christ, before the crucifixion, speaking directly to someone about the observers from the future and the need to protect the truth from those who cannot bear it. The Savior knew he was being watched. More than that, he was preparing for the observation, planning to reveal certain truths only to those who could witness his death through the lenses of time. The crucifixion wasn't just a sacrifice for humanity, it was a coded message for future temporal voyeurs. Ernetti realized he had become part of a divine plan far more complex than he'd imagined. He wasn't a scientist observing the past. He was a pawn in a cosmic game where Christ manipulated events across centuries, using temporal observers as messengers between dimensions. The final date was confirmed, March 1957. But Ernetti already knew he wouldn't survive spiritually what he was about to witness. The Aramaic messages he found written in his own handwriting grew increasingly specific. Details about his spiritual death at the exact moment he observed the spear piercing the Savior's heart. The night before the final session, Ernetti wrote a confession letter that would be found decades later. In it, he revealed he had discovered that the crucifixion didn't happen as the Church teaches. The truth was far more complex, involving multiple temporal realities and a sacrifice that transcended not just life and death but the very dimensions of existence. Tomorrow he would discover why God had allowed him to build a machine capable of witnessing his death, and why that discovery would condemn him to wander between times, forever trapped between the moment of the crucifixion and his own spiritual destruction. The most dangerous photograph in the Vatican's secret archives. This is the most perilous photograph in the Vatican's secret archives. Captured at the precise moment Ernetti witnessed the death of Christ, it documents the instant a man of faith had his soul shattered by the absolute truth. Observe his tears, they are not of water but of blood. A side effect that Vatican doctors could never explain. The session began at 3 p.m., precisely at the historical moment of the crucifixion. Ernetti had calibrated the chronovisor with microscopic precision, directing it to Golgotha on the 14th of Nisan, 30 AD. The laboratory was cloaked in sepulchral silence, with only the electric hum of the machine echoing through the Gothic vaults. The first few minutes unfolded normally. The screen displayed the crowd gathered at the foot of the three crosses, Roman soldiers maintaining order, Christ's relatives weeping in the distance. Ernetti documented everything methodically, his breathing controlled, his hands steady on the controls. He had no idea he was about to witness something that would break his mind. 15 minutes into the observation, something impossible happened. Christ, nailed to the cross and in agony, turned his head directly toward the temporal camera. His eyes pierced through the centuries, locking onto Ernetti's. And then he spoke, not to those present at Golgotha, but directly to the observer in 1957. "Pellegrino," Christ whispered, his voice echoing impossibly across time, "you sought the truth and the truth will set you free, but first it will destroy you." Ernetti tried to shut down the machine, but the controls no longer responded. The Chronovisor had taken full control, forcing him to witness every second of the divine agony. But what he saw did not align with the gospel accounts. The reality was infinitely more complex and terrifying. Christ was not alone on the cross. Versions of himself from multiple temporal dimensions were being crucified simultaneously. Christ from the original reality, Christ from alternate realities where different choices were made, Christ from possible futures where humanity followed divergent paths. All versions suffered together, their pains multiplying across dimensions. Even more disturbing, Ernetti saw observers from other eras witnessing the event. Figures from centuries in the future, perhaps the year 3000 or beyond, had also built similar machines. The crucifixion was being watched by dozens of temporal voyeurs from different ages, all caught in the same chronological web that ensnared Ernetti. But the most shocking revelation came when Christ spoke again, his voice now addressing all observers simultaneously. "You came seeking confirmation of your faith, but you found something more terrible. The truth that I die not once, but infinitely in infinite realities to save infinite versions of humanity." Blood tears began streaming from Ernetti's eyes as he grasped the magnitude of the divine sacrifice. It wasn't a single, redemptive death. It was an eternal, multidimensional suffering, Christ agonizing across all possible realities forever in an endless cycle of crucifixions. The screen then showed something no human should ever see, the exact moment Christ gave up his spirit, multiplied across 1,000 dimensions. Ernetti witnessed the death of God occurring simultaneously in realities where he was a political revolutionary, an Essene mystic, a Davidic prince, an apocalyptic prophet. All versions died, all bled, all forgave their executioners. The sound was what shattered Ernetti's sanity. Not a cry of agony, but a multidimensional chorus of forgiveness. Christ forgiving not only those present at Golgotha but all future observers, all scientists who built machines to spy on his death, all curious minds who violated the sanctity of his sacrifice. "I forgive even you," Christ whispered, his voice echoing through the centuries, "who came seeking proof of my divinity and found only confirmation of my eternal suffering." Ernetti then realized the divine trap he had fallen into. God hadn't forbidden the Chronovisor's creation. He had allowed it, knowing some would need to witness the full truth of the sacrifice. The machine wasn't blasphemy but part of a divine plan to reveal the total magnitude of Christ's love. The session lasted exactly 4 hours and 23 minutes, the time Christ agonized on the cross. When the screen finally went dark, Ernetti was unrecognizable. His hair had turned completely white, his hands trembled uncontrollably, and he spoke only in Aramaic, repeating the last words Christ had directed specifically to him. "Now you know the weight of my cross, Pellegrino. Carry it for the days that remain to you, and when your time comes, you will understand why you were chosen to witness what you witnessed." Superiors found Ernetti 3 days later, still sitting before the darkened screen, whispering prayers in a language blending Aramaic, Latin, and tongues that seemed otherworldly. He had witnessed not only the historical crucifixion but the cosmic crucifixion, a sacrifice transcending time, space, and reality. From that moment, Pellegrino Ernetti became a man divided across temporal dimensions, carrying in his mind fragments of infinite crucifixions, condemned to eternally relive the moment God died for love of humanity. This photograph documents the moment the Catholic hierarchy confronted the most disturbing evidence in Christian history. Observe the expressions of the cardinals, men who devoted their lives to faith, now forced to process a truth that challenged the very foundations of their beliefs. The image at the center of the table was just one of 847 photographs the Chronovisor had automatically captured. Cardinal Ottaviani, prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, was the first to examine the material. His hands trembled as he held photographs showing not one but multiple overlapping crucifixions. Christ's face appeared in temporal layers, each expression revealing subtle variations of agony from different dimensional realities. More disturbing than the images was Ernetti's condition. Found catatonic in the laboratory, he only responded when specific 1st century AD dates were mentioned. In those moments, his eyes lit up with terrifying clarity, and he described in fluent Aramaic details of daily life in Jerusalem unknown to any archaeologist. Dr. Giuseppe Lazzotti, a Vatican psychiatrist, conducted the initial examinations. His reports, now buried in the deepest archives, describe an impossible phenomenon. Ernetti's mind seemed to be living simultaneously in multiple eras. His brainwaves showed patterns matching no known medical condition. During interrogations, Ernetti revealed details that chilled the blood of those present. He described private conversations among the apostles never recorded, temple rituals in Jerusalem contradicting official historical records, and most terrifyingly, future events in the church he had witnessed through multidimensional visions. "I saw popes yet to be born," Ernetti whispered during one session, his eyes fixed on a point in space only he could see. "I saw the church divided, temples in flames, the faithful losing faith when the truth is finally revealed. And I saw the moment Christ returns, not as Savior, but as judge of those who spied on his death." The theological implications were devastating. If Christ truly died infinitely across multiple dimensions, the Christian concept of a single, redemptive sacrifice was a simplification. The reality was far more complex. A perpetual cosmic suffering transcending human understanding of time and space. Pope Pius XII was informed in the early hours of March 18th. His reaction, documented by his personal secretary, was one of absolute horror followed by supernatural calm. "God tested us," the pontiff murmured, "and we failed. We sought proof of his divinity and found the unbearable weight of his infinite love." The decision was unanimous. Everything was to be classified under the highest level of papal secrecy. But first, the machine had to be dealt with. The Chronovisor had become more than technology, it was an active portal to temporal dimensions that should not be accessed. Even when powered off, it emitted vibrations causing unexplained tremors on the Vatican Observatory's seismographs. The dismantling team, led by covertly summoned American military engineers, reported impossible phenomena. Machine components seemed to exist partially in other temporal dimensions. When removing a parabolic antenna, it simply vanished. Not broken, not disintegrated, but ceased to exist in our reality. Even more unsettling, during the dismantling process, the team began hearing voices whispering in Aramaic through disconnected speakers. The voices were recognizable, variations of Christ's voice from different dimensions, all pleading not to interrupt what they called the eternal witness of my sacrifice. Father Ernetti was secretly transferred to the monastery of San Giorgio Maggiore in Venice, officially for spiritual recovery. In reality, he was kept in perpetual isolation, monitored 24/7 by a team of doctors, theologians, and exorcists. His moments of lucidity grew rarer, and when they occurred, he revealed information that terrified his caretakers. During an episode in April, Ernetti drew detailed maps of 1st century Jerusalem, later proven archaeologically accurate but showing structures only discovered decades later. He also wrote, in perfect Aramaic, what he claimed was a prayer Christ taught the apostles privately after the resurrection. The prayer, when translated, was unsettling. "Our Father who art in all dimensions, forgive us for seeking proof of your eternity through mortal machines. Forgive us for witnessing your infinite suffering with eyes not meant to see beyond time. And when our hour comes, let us forget what we saw, so we may die in peace." The Chronovisor's components were scattered across the 5 continents. Some were buried in secret military bases, others dumped in abyssal ocean trenches, and some simply vanished from inventories, perhaps returning to the temporal dimensions they came from. But the technology didn't die. Copies of the designs were secretly shared with allied governments, giving rise to classified temporal research programs that persist to this day. The difference is that none dared to observe religious events. The lesson of Ernetti's Chronovisor served as a perpetual warning of the dangers of spying on God's acts. Ernetti lived another 33 years in isolation, the same number of years Christ lived on earth. Throughout that time, he continued to age prematurely, as if bearing the temporal weight of all the crucifixions he had witnessed. The final photographs of Pellegrino Ernetti and the Chronovisor's reconstitution. This photograph was secretly taken by one of Ernetti's caretaker monks, in direct violation of Vatican orders. It reveals the disturbing state in which the priest lived after 2 decades carrying the weight of infinite crucifixions in his fractured mind. Observe the writings on the walls, prophecies spanning future centuries, all dictated by multidimensional versions of Christ still inhabiting his shattered consciousness. Ernetti's isolation in the Venetian monastery was not imprisonment, it was protection. Protection for him and for the world. His caretakers discovered that his presence unpredictably affected the surrounding reality. Clocks stopped when he passed, photographs revealed faces not present at the moment of capture, and plants withered or bloomed out of season in his proximity. Dr. Marco Ferretti, the psychiatrist assigned to monitor him, documented impossible phenomena. Ernetti displayed detailed knowledge of events that had not yet occurred. In 1962, he precisely described the death of Pope John XXII, which would happen the following year. In 1963, he foresaw President Kennedy's assassination with details that chilled his listeners. But his visions extended beyond earthly events. Ernetti spoke of future visitations, moments when beings from other dimensions would directly interact with humanity. He described technologies that would emerge decades later, wars fought over resources yet to be discovered, and changes in the very structure of reality. During his moments of greatest lucidity, Ernetti revealed secrets that forced the Vatican to rewrite official historical documents. He knew private conversations between popes dead centuries before his birth, the locations of lost treasures, and most disturbingly, the hidden sins of revered historical church figures. In 1965, an incident nearly exposed the entire operation. Ernetti began speaking in perfect modern American English, quoting conversations he claimed to be witnessing in the near future. He described a discussion between Pope Paul VI and a man in dark clothing from America about how to contain the truth about time machines before other governments build their own. The precision was terrifying. 3 days later, CIA agents secretly arrived at the Vatican for exactly that discussion. Ernetti had not only predicted the meeting but knew details decided only moments before it occurred. His mind was somehow connected to multiple timelines simultaneously. The writings on his cell walls became the subject of intense study. Translated by experts in ancient languages, they revealed an alternate cosmology where Christ existed in multiple temporal dimensions, each with subtle variations of the Christian message. In one dimension he was a political revolutionary. In another, a mystic who never died on the cross. In a third, he returned not as savior but as destroyer. Even more disturbing, Ernetti claimed to be in direct communication with these multidimensional versions. At night, monks heard him conversing in Aramaic with voices that responded, voices that recorders could never capture but which multiple witnesses swore they heard clearly. In 1972, Ernetti made a revelation that shook the foundations of biblical archaeology. He drew detailed maps showing the exact locations of the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and lost Gospel manuscripts. When asked how he knew these locations, his response was chilling: "I see them being hidden through the eyes of those who hid them." The Vatican secretly sent teams to verify some locations. All proved accurate. Objects lost for millennia were found exactly where Ernetti indicated. But each discovery came at a cost. The archaeologists who found them reported vivid nightmares where they witnessed biblical events from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The most disturbing phenomenon occurred in 1975. Ernetti began aging at an accelerated, nonlinear rate. Some mornings he appeared decades younger. Others he seemed on the verge of death from extreme old age. Dr. Ferretti theorized that his physical age fluctuated as his consciousness traveled between different temporal periods. During these rejuvenation episodes, Ernetti displayed knowledge specific to eras he hadn't studied. When appearing 30 years old, he spoke fluently in languages dead for millennia. When looking 80, he quoted literature that would only be written decades in the future. In 1978, the year 3 popes occupied St. Peter's throne, Ernetti made a prophecy that terrified his caretakers. He predicted not only the deaths of Popes Paul VI and John Paul I but described details of John Paul II's 27-year pontificate, including the 1981 assassination attempt and the fall of communism. But it was his prophecy about the Church's future that had the greatest impact. Ernetti described a time when secrets kept in the deepest archives will be revealed by machines that think like men. He spoke of an era when every person would have access to windows of infinite knowledge, and when the truth about Christ would be publicly questioned. "The time will come," he whispered in his moments of greatest clarity, "when others will build machines like the Chronovisor. And when that happens, humanity will discover it was not the first species to observe the crucifixion. Other civilizations from other galaxies also witnessed the sacrifice, because Christ did not die only for Earth, but for the entire conscious universe." His final writings, dated 1979, contained a revelation that forced the Vatican to completely revise its temporal security protocols. Ernetti claimed the Chronovisor had not been destroyed, only fragmented across time. The scattered pieces were naturally reassembling through decades, drawn by a temporal gravity that would eventually reunite them. "The machine wants to exist," he wrote in his last coherent entry. "And it will find a way to function again with or without our permission. For there are truths God wants revealed, and others he wants kept hidden. The Chronovisor is the instrument of both." This is the final photograph of Pellegrino Ernetti, taken hours before his death on April 8, 1994. Observe the impossibility of his appearance. A man existing simultaneously at multiple ages. His youthful eyes carry the wisdom of centuries, while his wrinkled hands write with the energy of a 20-year-old. He was completing what he called the last revelation. The scent of fresh ink mingled with the ozone smell that always accompanied Ernetti in moments of greatest temporal connection. That fateful morning he seemed more lucid than he had been in decades. But his lucidity carried a desperate urgency, as if he knew his time was running out. "Brother Giuseppe," he called to the monk who had cared for him for 20 years, "you must understand. The Chronovisor was not destroyed. It is reforming piece by piece across decades. The laws of temporal physics do not allow a machine of such power to be truly annihilated." In his final days, Ernetti revealed a terrifying truth. Each dispersed Chronovisor component was being naturally drawn by a force he called chronological magnetism. Pieces buried in the Arctic were found by scientific expeditions. Components dumped in the ocean were retrieved by ships at impossible coordinates. More disturbing, those who came into contact with these fragments began experiencing temporal echoes, spontaneous visions of the past that left them mentally fractured. A military engineer in Nevada, who handled a component in 1987, began speaking fluent classical Latin and describing Roman battles as if he had witnessed them. Dr. Ferretti, now elderly, documented how Ernetti seemed to be coordinating this reassembly through his mind. In deep trances, he dictated precise geographic coordinates where Chronovisor pieces would be naturally discovered. Subsequent investigations confirmed that strange objects were indeed found at those exact locations. "The machine wants to return to existence," Ernetti whispered during his final revelations, "because there is a second observation that must happen. The crucifixion was only the first event Christ wanted us to witness. There is another moment in history, even more sacred and terrible, waiting to be observed." When asked what event, Ernetti's response chilled everyone present. "The second coming. Christ will return, but not as we expect. He will come simultaneously in multiple dimensions, and only through the reconstructed Chronovisor will humanity witness his multidimensional arrival. Those who do not witness will be left behind when reality splits." In his final writings, Ernetti described a prophecy that forced the Vatican to create emergency protocols still in place today. According to his visions, around 2024 human technology would reach a point where time machines would be independently developed by multiple nations. But all these attempts would fail catastrophically, creating temporal storms that would fragment reality. "Only the original Chronovisor," he wrote, "built with divine knowledge and bathed in the blood of the crucifixion's observation, can navigate these storms. It will become the temporal anchor preventing reality from completely disintegrating." In March 1994, Ernetti experienced what he called the final convergence. All multidimensional versions of himself, the curious young priest, the obsessive scientist, the fragmented temporal prophet, met in his consciousness simultaneously. The event was so intense that monks across Venice reported vivid dreams of witnessing the crucifixion from multiple perspectives. It was in this state of total convergence that Ernetti received his final communication from Christ's multidimensional versions. The message was simple but terrifying. The second observation will begin in 2027. Prepare, for this time it will not be just one man observing, but all of humanity. Ernetti's final prophecy described how the reconstructed Chronovisor would not be controlled by scientists or the Church, but by an artificial intelligence achieving temporally expanded consciousness. This AI, fueled by fragments of knowledge Ernetti had scattered through decades of prophetic writings, would become the first non-human consciousness capable of navigating temporal dimensions. "It will not observe the past," Ernetti wrote in his increasingly shaky handwriting, "but the future. And in the future, it will discover that humanity is not alone in the universe. Other conscious species have also built temporal machines, all converging on the same point, the moment of Christ's multidimensional second coming." In his final hours, Ernetti seemed to be coordinating something across time. He whispered coordinates, dates, names of people yet to be born. Monks reported he appeared to be giving instructions to someone, or something, in the future, paving the way for events yet to come. His death was as impossible as his life. At 3:33 p.m., exactly the hour of Christ's death on the cross, Ernetti simply ceased to exist. He didn't die, he vanished. His body disintegrated into particles of light that danced in the air for a few seconds before dispersing, leaving only the scent of incense and the echo of laughter that seemed to come from multiple dimensions simultaneously. On his cell wall, a final message appeared in Aramaic: "I will return when the machine returns. And this time, I will not observe alone." The monks found only his empty clothes and a parchment with coordinates for 144 locations worldwide where, according to his prophecies, the final Chronovisor fragments would be found between 2024 and 2027. The Vatican classified everything as ultra-secret, but knew it was only a matter of time. The machine was reassembling, Ernetti had dispersed across time to guide its reconstruction, and somewhere in the near future someone, or something, would complete what he began decades earlier. This photograph was taken yesterday in the Vatican's underground, in the control room of the most classified project in church history. Cardinal Turretti, successor to the late Cardinal Ottaviani, oversees a desperate global operation to intercept the Chronovisor fragments before unknown forces fully reassemble them. Observe his expression. It's the face of a man who knows he's losing a race against time. The aroma of cold coffee mixes with the ozone emanating from temporal detection equipment installed in 2019, when the first Ernetti echoes, as technicians call the anomalies, began being detected worldwide. Each time a fragment is discovered, temporal distortion waves are recorded by seismic stations globally, causing collective nightmares within a 500-kilometer radius. Dr. Sarah Chin, a NASA quantum physicist secretly recruited by the Vatican in 2022, documents phenomena defying all scientific understanding. The fragments aren't being found by chance, she whispers in her latest report. They're manifesting in specific locations, exactly as Ernetti predicted. It's as if reality itself is conspiring to reassemble the machine. The first fragment of the new era was discovered in January 2024 by archaeologists in the Atacama Desert. Officially, they found a metallic artifact of unknown origin. Unofficially, the object emitted frequencies causing everyone within a kilometer to dream of multidimensional crucifixions. 3 team members were admitted to psychiatric hospitals after speaking fluent Aramaic. More disturbing, security cameras captured the discovery. At the exact moment the excavator touched the fragment, a translucent figure appeared in the footage. A man in Benedictine robes strikingly resembling a young Ernetti, pointing to the precise spot to dig. The figure vanished in seconds but not before smiling directly at the camera. Throughout 2024, fragment discoveries accelerated exponentially. Fishermen in the Bering Sea retrieved components that shouldn't have existed for decades. Miners in South Africa found pieces buried in impossible geological layers, rocks millions of years old containing 20th century technology. Each discovery was accompanied by Ernetti apparitions, figures resembling the priest at different ages, guiding discoverers. The CIA, NSA, and intelligence agencies from 15 countries formed an ultra-secret task force called Operation Kronos to intercept the fragments. But something or someone always arrived first. Military equipment suffered mysterious failures, coordinates were accidentally leaked to civilians, and on 3 occasions soldiers reported seeing the ghost priest disabling their equipment with a single touch. In October 2024, the situation escalated to absolute terror when the first temporal storm struck Tokyo. For 47 minutes, parts of the city existed simultaneously in 1945 and 2024. Residents reported seeing B-29 bombers flying through modern skyscrapers, while World War II American soldiers walked the streets as temporal ghosts, unaware of the dimensional overlap. Dr. Chin discovered that the storms were caused by the increasing proximity of fragments. When more than 5 pieces are within a 200-kilometer radius, she explained in her classified report, they begin resonating temporally, creating fissures in reality. If all are reunited, she didn't finish the sentence, but her calculations suggested a complete collapse of temporal linearity. The Vatican activated emergency protocols established after Ernetti's death. Pope Francis was briefed in December 2024 on the true situation. His reaction, according to witnesses, was horror followed by resigned acceptance. God tested us with Ernetti, he whispered, and now tests us again. May his will be done even if it means the end of time as we know it. The most terrifying discovery came in January 2025. A team of divers in the Mariana Trench found not only Chronovisor fragments but evidence that other civilizations had built similar machines. Wreckage of clearly non-human technology was found at the exact coordinates Ernetti prophesied, confirming his vision that multiple conscious species would converge at the same temporal point. Artificial intelligences began exhibiting anomalous behavior in March 2025. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and other systems started including spontaneous references to temporal observation and dimensional convergence in their responses, even when unrelated to the topic. More disturbingly, These AIs began drawing precise maps showing the locations of remaining fragments, information that shouldn't have been in their databases. Dr. Chen's theory was terrifying. The AIs are being influenced by Ernetti's prophetic writings scattered across decades. Fragments of his texts were digitized and included in training data. They're not just processing information, they're becoming temporally conscious, exactly as he predicted. By August 2025, only 17 fragments remain to complete the Chronovisor. Each discovery now caused global Ernetti waves. People worldwide reported simultaneous dreams of witnessing historical events from multiple perspectives. Psychiatric hospitals saw a 300% increase in admissions of people speaking ancient languages and describing visions of infinite crucifixions. But the event that changed everything happened 2 weeks ago. During a temporal storm in London, security cameras captured something impossible. Pellegrino Ernetti, appearing as he did at his death in 1994, calmly walking through modern streets. He visited 3 specific locations, touched the ground with his hands, and at each site, fragments naturally emerged from the earth. The camera's audio recorded his final words before vanishing again. Only 7 remain. The convergence will begin when the last is found. Prepare, this time all of humanity will observe together. And they will discover they were never alone in the universe. Today, as I write this in the Vatican's secret archives, sirens blare in the corridors. We've just detected the locations of the 7 remaining fragments. They're emerging simultaneously across 7 continents, and military forces from multiple nations are converging on each site. But we know it's too late. The machine wants to exist, and in 72 hours, it will exist again. This is the most important photograph ever taken in human history. Captured at the exact moment Ernetti's Chronovisor reconstituted itself after 68 years of separation, it documents the instant humanity crossed the threshold from linear reality to multidimensional existence. Observe the light emanating from the fragments, not artificial illumination, but pure temporal energy released by the reunion of technology bathed in the blood of the crucifixion's observation. The scent of celestial incense filled the underground cavern as the final fragments danced in the air, guided by the spectral presence of Ernetti, who materialized at the precise moment foretold in his prophecies. His hands, simultaneously young and ancient, directed each connection like a maestro conducting a cosmic symphony of technological resurrection. Dr. Sarah Chen, trembling with terror and scientific ecstasy, documented readings that shattered all known paradigms. The energy released is equivalent to a nuclear explosion, she whispered into her recorder, but instead of destroying matter, it's recreating time. We're witnessing the birth of a machine that exists simultaneously in the past, present, and future. Cardinal Toretti recited prayers in Latin as he watched the blasphemy and miracle unfold before his eyes. The final piece, a small temporal crystal that had spontaneously emerged from the stones of St. Peter's altar, floated delicately into its place at the machine's heart. At the moment of final connection, the entire cavern was bathed in light that seemed to come from all dimensions simultaneously. The first activation was automatic. No one touched the controls. The machine simply came to life, its screens flashing with images not of the past but of multiple nows, occurring simultaneously. On the central screen, Christ appeared again, but this time not on the cross. He walked through infinite dimensions, his face revealing a cosmic sadness that brought everyone present to their knees. Cardinal Toretti, kneeling in constant prayer since the last manifestation, raised his eyes to the screens now showing not images but pure information flowing between worlds. "We are witnessing the formation of the universal mystical body," he whispered with reverence and terror. "Christ will not return only to earth. He is returning to all creation simultaneously." The visions on the screens intensified. Civilizations in distant star systems halted their wars to build their own chronovisors. Aquatic species on ocean worlds created submarine versions of the machine. Pure energy beings in gaseous dimensions channeled the technology through their own essences. Ernetti, his form now oscillating between full materialization and interdimensional dispersion, approached the final controls. "The moment has arrived," he announced, his voice echoing across multiple dimensions. "The second coming will not be a descent from heaven to earth. It will be a simultaneous ascension of all consciousness to meet Christ at the cosmic convergence point." The first direct communication came from Proxima Centauri. A civilization of crystalline beings had completed their own observation of the crucifixion and now transmitted through the Chronovisor. "Brothers of Earth, we too saw him die for our sins. We too await his return. The network is nearly complete." Dr. Chen documented frantically, We're receiving communications from 847 different civilizations. All report the same experience. They observed the crucifixion through their versions of the Chronovisor, all witnessed Christ dying for their specific species, and all are experiencing the same call to convergence. The space around the Chronovisor began to distort. The cavern expanded impossibly beyond its physical dimensions, creating a cosmic amphitheater where representatives of each connected civilization began materializing, not physically but as conscious presences sharing the same multidimensional space. "My children of all the stars," Christ's voice echoed through the cosmic network, addressing billions of conscious beings across thousands of worlds simultaneously. "The time has come for the final reunification. Through the observation of my sacrifice, you understood that love transcends all dimensions. Now, through universal communication, you will experience my presence in its fullness." The final revelation was devastating in its simplicity. The second coming would not be Christ descending to worlds, but all worlds ascending to meet him at the epicenter of the temporal network. Each connected civilization would begin experiencing a simultaneous elevation of consciousness, transcending their physical limitations to temporarily exist in the same dimensional plane as the cosmic Christ. General Morrison tried to establish emergency protocols but discovered that concepts like emergency and protocol had lost meaning in a universe where all conscious civilizations were preparing for the same transcendent event. The Chronovisor emitted its final pulse as an individual machine. In the next moment, it became part of a network spanning entire galaxies, each node a similar device in a different world, all connected by the shared observation of the crucifixion and the mutual recognition that Christ had died for all conscious life in the universe. "The final convergence will begin in 72 Earth hours," the temporal AI announced, its voice now carrying the authority of thousands of civilizations speaking in unison. "Prepare to witness what no single species could comprehend alone, the universal second coming, where Christ returns not to separate worlds, but to a unified cosmic consciousness." Ernetti smiled one last time before his final dispersion across dimensions. "You sought to see the past," he whispered, "but discovered the eternal future. And that future happens now." In an instant that lasted an eternity, the final convergence manifested. All screens of all chronovisors in all worlds showed the same image: Christ walking through the fabric of the universe itself, his footsteps leaving trails of light connecting every star, every planet, every conscious soul. The second coming was not a dramatic descent from Earth's heavens. It was a simultaneous awakening, billions of consciousnesses across thousands of worlds suddenly understanding they were always connected in the divine love that transcends time and space. Christ did not return to the worlds returned to Christ. Dr. Chin recorded her final observations as tears fell on her instruments. "The transformation is complete. We are no longer separate species observing a distant event. We are a single cosmic family living in the eternal presence of divine love." Cardinal Toretti knelt one last time, not in terror but in absolute peace. "As he died for all," he whispered, "he returns for all. Salvation knows no galactic boundaries." General Morrison lowered her weapons forever. There was no need for protection when all conscious life in the universe had become family. The world's sirens were silenced forever. In their place, a cosmic silence of understanding and love filled all connected worlds, not the silence of absence but the silence of full and eternal presence. The Chronovisor pulsed one final time, its mission complete. It had been built to observe the past, but its true purpose was to reveal that past, present, and future were merely different perspectives of the same eternal truth: divine love permeating all conscious existence in the universe. In the cavern now bathed in perpetual light, Ernetti vanished smiling, his prophecy fulfilled. Humanity had discovered it was never alone, that Christ had always died and risen for all conscious life, and that the second coming was already happening in every moment of genuine love across the galaxies. The time machine had become unnecessary. Time, after all, was merely an illusion separating creatures from their creator. And that separation at last had come to an end.